Hello and welcome back. In my previous video, I shared my favorite realistic stories from Tales from the Crypt, a show I absolutely loved as a child. However, before I discovered HBO's 90s horror classic, there was a series of films that truly ignited my passion for horror anthologies with a touch of dark humor. I'm, of course, talking about the Creepshow movie series. Although I'm covering Creepshow second, I hold both Tales from the Crypt and Creepshow in equally high regard. In this video, we'll recap the classic segments. The first film, Creepshow, was released in 1982 and has become an American horror comedy anthology classic. Directed by George Romero and written by Stephen King, who made his screenwriting debut with this film. It features an all-star cast, including Hal Holbrook, Leslie Nielsen, Ted Danson, and Ed Harris. Not to mention, Stephen King himself makes an appearance. The film was primarily shot on location in Pittsburgh and its suburbs, including Monroeville, where Romero leased Penn Hall to create extensive sets for the production. Creepshow consists of 5 short stories, and the first one is titled Father's Day. The story begins at the Grantham estate, where Sylvia Grantham meets her niece and nephew, along with Cass's new husband, Hank. They're for the family's annual dinner on the 3rd Sunday in June. As they settle in, the family shares an unsettling tale about their matriarch, Great Aunt Bedelia. It's an open secret that Bedelia murdered her late father, the miserly and domineering Nathan Grantham. Nathan built the family fortune through a nefarious mix of bootlegging, fraud, extortion, and even murder for hire. Years ago, Bedelia became an unstable spinster after enduring a lifetime of her father's incessant demands and emotional abuse, which only worsened when he suffered a stroke and required full-time care. This torment reached its peak when Nathan orchestrated a fatal hunting accident that claimed the life of Bedelia's fiancé, Peter Yarbrough, ensuring she remained under his thumb. On that fateful Father's Day, driven to a murderous rage by Nathan's constant insults and his childish demands for cake, Bedelia took matters into her own hands and bashed his head in with a marble ashtray. Fast forward to the present day, and Bedelia arrives at Grantham Manor that evening. She makes a stop at the family cemetery, just outside the mansion, to lay a flower at her father's grave. While reminiscing about the murder through a haze of whiskey, she reveals that Sylvia staged Nathan's death as an accident to steal and distribute his fortune among the family. In a clumsy moment, she spills her whiskey in front of the headstone, and just then, Nathan's reanimated, putrefied, maggot-infested corpse rises from the grave, still demanding the Father's Day cake he never received. What follows is a grisly tale of revenge. Nathan avenges himself on Bedelia by strangling her, then methodically wipes out the rest of his family, telekinetically crushing Hank to death with a gravestone. Followed by twisting Sylvia's neck. As a gruesome final joke, Nathan presents Cass and Richard with his version of a Father's Day cake. Sylvia's severed head, complete with frosting and lit candles. The segment ends with a saying that my brother Dave and I still say to each other every time we have any type of cake.
I got my cake. Happy Father's Day.
In the second segment, the lonesome death of Jordy Verrill. We are introduced to our title character, Jordy Verrill, a comedy and somewhat dim-witted yokel who witnesses a meteorite crash land on his farm. As he approaches the crash site, he gets his fingers burned when he tried to touch the meteorite. In a whimsical fantasy sequence, Jordy imagines selling the meteorite to the local college's Department of Meteors, envisioning that the sale will provide enough money to pay off a $200 bank loan. Determined to protect his newfound treasure, He douses the meteorite with a bucket of water, which causes it to crack open and spill a glowing blue liquid. In another fantasy sequence, Jordy envisions the Department of Meteors refusing to purchase the now damaged meteorite.
Broken meteor? Mr. Verrill, you must be joking.
Leaving him feeling deflated. Resolving to glue the halves together in the morning, he carelessly dumps the liquid from the meteor into the soil, all the while oblivious to the fact that the substance has made contact with his skin. As time goes by, Jordy notices his fingers becoming overtaken by what looks like grass. He considers calling a doctor for help, but hesitates when he imagines, in yet another fantasy sequence, that the doctor will simply chop off his afflicted fingers without any anesthetic. Meanwhile, the strange substance continues to spread across his farm, covering everything he has touched, and even growing on his own body, which drives him to itch furiously.
Gory, don't it itch!
Panicking at the alarming growth, Jordy tries to calm himself by pouring a bottle of vodka and mixing it with orange juice.
The Tri-State Ecumenical Council presents Let There Be Light with Father Martin Buzby.
Many of you have made the great breakthrough, one giant step, the faith decision.
He did that?
Unfortunately, he soon falls asleep in a drunken stupor. When he wakes up later, he initially believes it was all just a bad dream. His hopes are quickly shattered when he sees that the plant growth has invaded his house, and when he notices in the mirror that he now sports a green beard. Attempting to relieve the itching, he starts to draw a bath. However, he is visited by the ghost of his deceased father, who warns him in the mirror that water is precisely what the plants want.
Not there!
Jordy!
Eddie?
Jordy! You ain't gonna get in that tub, are you? Stop water there at once, Jordy!
Grimly rationalizing that avoiding the bath will only delay the inevitable, Jordy sighs, lamenting,
I'm a goner already, Daddy. Ain't I?
Eventually, the itching from the growth on his skin becomes too much to bear, and he succumbs to temptation, collapsing into the bathwater.
Oh, better. Oh, that's lots better. Oh. Oh.
The next morning, Jordy's farm is completely covered in dense layers of alien vegetation, and he is transformed into a human-shaped mass of plant matter. In despair, he reaches for a coach gun, prays to God for one stroke of luck, and tragically,
Just this once.
almost immediately, a TV weather forecast announces moderate temperatures and heavy rains on the way, signaling that the plants will soon spread down the road to other towns.
Well, not much for the outdoor types, but you farmers are going to love this. The current 30-day forecast released by the U.S. Meteorological Station at Portland calls for moderating temperatures and lots of rain. Castle County is going to turn green so fast in the next month that it's going to be almost miraculous.
The next segment, titled Something to Tide You Over. Richard Vickers is a ruthless and heartless millionaire, his spry jocularity masking a cold-blooded, murderous nature. He pays a visit to Harry Wentworth, the man having an affair with his wife Becky. Richard casually mentions that he and Becky never shared any real affection, but that's beside the point. His point of honor is always to keep what's his.
And talk to me, something very nasty is going to happen to Rebecca. So nasty that your little mind can barely conceive of it.
Instead of physically confronting Harry, Richard plays a recording of Becky's voice, where she tearfully begs for Harry's help.
Please, Harry! Please come!
I had to stop it there. I couldn't bear to record anymore.
Both men then head to Comfort Point, Richard's isolated beach house. Richard points out what looks like a burial mound in the sand. When Harry rushes toward it, Richard pulls a gun on him, forcing Harry to jump into the empty hole and start burying himself.
Even when the tide's out, the water creeps in.
I don't know what the hell you think.
Jump into that hole.
Eventually, Richard finishes the grim task, Burying Harry neck deep in the sand below the high tide line, he sets up a closed-circuit TV camera and a VCR to capture the scene. Along with this, he brings a monitor displaying Becky, who is also buried up to her neck further down the beach, with the rising tide already lapping at her face. Richard informs Harry that he and Becky have a slim chance of survival. If they can hold their breath long enough for the sand to loosen when the seawater covers them, they might be able to break free.
You bastard.
There's a chance you can get out of this, Carrie. The tide might even set you free. It depends on how long you keep it cool, how long you hold your breath, you see. And you're holding your breath and you're waiting for that wave that's covering you to go on back out so you can snatch a quick breath.
With that, Richard abandons Harry and heads back to Comfort Point. Sipping a cocktail, he watches with great satisfaction as Harry and Becky slowly drown. Just before Harry is completely submerged by the tide, he looks directly into the camera and vows revenge on Richard.
I'm gonna get you. You hear me, Richard? You hear me, Richard? I'm gonna get you!
Now hold your breath there, Harry.
Hours later, Richard returns to collect the tape from Harry's grave, only to find the ruined monitor and no sign of Harry. Not fazed, Richard dismisses this as the body being swept away by the current.
And that's what happened, all right? Current pulled him out. He's gone.
Later that night, he hears voices calling his name as a mysterious unseen presence effortlessly bypasses Comfort Point's extensive security system.
Boy, if that damn maid has been moving my stuff again, I swear I'll...
The culprits turn out to be Harry and Becky, now waterlogged, seaweed-covered revenants intent on avenging their killer. When Richard shoots at them, the bullets have no effect.
We dug a hole for you, Richard. On the beach. Try not. Here we come.
So he barricades himself in his bedroom, only to find that Becky and Harry have already made their way inside. The two taunt him, and Richard laughs maniacally in a fit of madness. Sometime later, the undead lovers have buried Richard up to his neck on the beach. They vanish into the surf together, leaving Richard's own seaweed-covered video camera to document his impending demise. As the tide approaches, Richard screams hysterically that he can hold his breath.
I can hold my breath for a long time!
In our second-to-last segment of the film, titled simply The Crate, Mike Latimer, a janitor at Horlicks University, is flipping a quarter when it slips from his fingers and rolls behind a grate under a basement staircase. While trying to retrieve the coin, he stumbles upon a wooden storage crate. Curiosity piqued, he calls Professor Dexter Stanley to share his discovery, pulling Dexter away from a faculty social gathering. At the gathering, Dexter's best friend, the mild-mannered Professor Henry Northrup, is present, along with Henry's obnoxiously drunk and emotionally abusive wife, Wilma Billy. She has a knack for embarrassing herself and belittling Henry, who regularly fantasizes about killing his dreadful wife, but lacks the courage to follow through. Dexter meets Mike at Amberson Hall, where they manage to move the crate into a nearby biology lab. The two work tirelessly to pry it open. However, while reaching inside the crate, Mike suddenly yells in pain. The crate finally opens to reveal its contents. A shaggy ape-like creature with sharp fangs. Despite its small size, the creature swiftly kills and devours Mike whole, leaving behind only his mangled boot. In a panic, Dexter rushes out of the lab and encounters graduate student Charlie Jerrison, frantically relaying what just happened. Initially skeptical, Charlie agrees to investigate the professor's claims. They return to the lab, only to find it drenched in blood with no trace of the creature or the crate. Traumatized and hysterical, Dexter rushes to Henry's house after Billy leaves for the evening. He shares the harrowing story of the crate and insists that the monster must be dealt with. Seeing the creature as a potential means to rid himself of Billy, Henry pretends to believe Dexter's tale. He spikes Dexter's drink with sleeping pills and writes a note claiming Dexter assaulted a female student, prompting Billy to rush to Amberson Hall. When she arrives, Henry lures her under the basement stairs, trying to awaken the creature. As Billy berates Henry for dragging her out in the middle of the night, the beast stirs and promptly consumes her.
Now get out of my way, Henry, or I swear to God you'll be wearing your balls for earrings. And I swear to God, if you ever touch me again...
Oh, just tell it to call you Billy.
The next morning, Henry tells Dexter that he has secured the beast inside its crate and dumped it into a nearby quarry, watching it sink to the bottom. He convinces Dexter that the creature has drowned, and both men agree to let the authorities deal with the disappearances. Unbeknownst to them, however, the beast is still very much alive and is last seen tearing the submerged crate apart. In the last segment of the film, titled "They're Creeping Up on You," Upson Pratt is portrayed as a ruthlessly cruel business mogul with an extreme case of mysophobia, leading him to live in a hermetically sealed penthouse apartment equipped with electric locks and surveillance cameras. His interactions with the outside world are primarily limited to phone calls, where he often harasses his beleaguered employees, resembling a character straight out of a Howard Hughes biography. On a particularly stormy night, Upson Pratt receives a call from George Gendron, one of his subordinates, who informs him about Pratt International's recent corporate takeover of Pacific Aerodyne. In a casual mention, Gendron reveals that the takeover had driven their business rival, Norman Kastenmeier, to commit
sewer slide.
Well, I guess it can, Mr. Pratt, but I want you to know that Pratt International now owns a majority of Pacific Aerodyne stock.
Of course we do.
Well,
I can't talk to you now, George. I'm going to clear up this damn cockroach problem once and for all.
Sir, Norman Gastenmeier shot himself an hour ago. What? He did it when it became clear there was no way to stop the takeover. At least that's what his wife thinks.
A flicker of delight appears on Pratt's face upon hearing the news. However, as Pratt revels in his malicious triumph, he begins to notice cockroaches creeping around his pristine apartment. His aversion to insects leads him to frantically grab bug spray in an attempt to combat these unwelcome guests. Just as he is processing the situation, an unexpected call comes through on his private line.
Right? Talk to me.
I just called to tell you what a monster you are, Mr. Pratt.
Tearfully, she recounts her husband's final moments, cursing Pratt for his part in Norman's death.
I'm the wife of the man you murdered this afternoon.
Mrs. Katzenmeier, how are you?
I hope they keep hell hot for you, you son of a bitch.
As the cockroach situation intensifies, Pratt discovers bits of the insects in his food processor, spurring him to call the building's superintendent, Carl Reynolds, who is currently away on vacation in Orlando. Despite being on vacation, Pratt pressures Reynolds to send the handyman, Mr. White, to arrange for an exterminator's arrival. Pratt threatens to fire Reynolds if he fails to comply. As the infestation worsens, Pratt discovers more cockroaches lurking in his box of cereal and desperately attempts to crush them to no avail. Mr. White eventually arrives outside Pratt's door, taunting him with a stereotypical minstrel voice as he announces that he's summoning an exterminator service.
Talk to me like that, you hear?
What way, Mr. Pratt?
Like I was crazy. Oh, no, sir, Mr. Pratt, sir. I don't think you was crazy, not at all.
Suddenly, a rolling blackout engulfs the entire building. As the blackout engulfs the entire building, cockroaches by the hundreds of thousands flood into Pratt's apartment from every nook and cranny. Overwhelmed by the swarming infestation, he attempts to activate the emergency power and calls the police for help.
Come on, what do I pay you for?
Police emergency.
It's about time. What are you people doing down there?
We got problems tonight, fella.
Listen, this is Upton Pratt. The Upton Pratt. Cockroaches. The biggest ones I've ever seen.
Only to discover they are unable to assist during the blackout. Mr. White is stuck in the elevator, leaving Pratt all alone to panic. In a state of desperation, Pratt locks himself in a climate-controlled panic room, seeking refuge from the relentless onslaught, as he receives yet another call from Lenore, who continues to vent her anger at Pratt's apartment is mysteriously void of cockroaches. However, his lifeless body remains slumped within the panic room. Mr. White pays a visit, receiving no response. In a smug tone, he smirks and quips, "Looks like the bugs got your tongue this time."
What's the matter, Mr. Pratt? Bugs got your tongue?
In a final, gruesome turn of events, Pratt's body writhes as cockroaches burst forth from his mouth and chest. As we've explored the twisted tales of Creepshow, it's clear that certain segments have earned a special place in the hearts of horror fans. Father's Day captivates with its blend of campy revenge and memorable characters, while The Crate stands out for its dark humor and effective tension, making it a fan favorite. Similarly, Something to Tide You Over delivers a thrilling twist on revenge that resonates long after the credits roll. These segments exemplify the perfect marriage of horror and humor, showcasing what makes Creepshow a classic in the anthology genre. In the end, Creepshow is definitely a great choice for the Halloween season, or whenever you're craving a mix of horror and comedy. But personally, I think Creepshow 2 does it better, hitting these notes even better than the original. But that's a conversation for another video. Thank you for tuning in.